everyone, I'm Sarah.
I'm Jojo.
And welcome to Portal to the Paranormal. And you're watching Thriller Podcast. Tonight, Portal to the Paranormal, we want to welcome one of our favourite guests.
She's an awesome YouTuber. She has a YouTube channel called Ghost Bike Explorations. She's an artist, a photographer.
An independent woman with a badass biker. She's a badass biker, paranormal investigator. Who runs the world? Girls. Let's introduce a lovely lady, Miranda Young. Anybody has any questions, please write them in the comments and we'll do our very best to read them out. Oh, here she is.
Hey, ladies. How are you guys doing today?
We're good. You?
Doing great. Thank you so much for taking the time to have me on.
Well, thank you for coming on. Much appreciated.
Oh,
Absolutely.
So excited. Oh, I can't
So it's
wait.
been a couple of years since we spoke to you.
It has.
I think we spoke to Nando before.
Yeah.
And that was a great podcast.
Yes, I just, I just love speaking with him, and then I've been following you guys for the past couple of years here over on Facebook and YouTube, and so really enjoyed that, and really happy to have the opportunity to be able to sit and talk to you live and kind of talk about some of the cool things that we got going on.
It's great to make connections, isn't it?
Absolutely.
Especially around the world. You know, you can tell us what you've got going on out there. We can tell us what we've had going on down here. Yeah. It's amazing.
Absolutely.
Anyway, we're going to get down to the nitty gritty. We're going to throw some questions at you, if that's okay.
Perfect.
Okay. So what was one that you wanted to ask first?
Well, we've noticed that you've been down at the Deep South ComicCon for the last few days. How was that? And what did you do?
So that was awesome. And, this was actually their first annual Comic-Con and paranormal convention. And so those are always a lot of fun because, the first year is always the hardest. But this was down in Daleville, Alabama, which was almost right down on the coast of the Gulf Coast down there. And so it was a 3-day event. And I spoke on 2 of those days, was able to set up a table and talk about some of the cool things that we've got going on with season 5 coming up. It was really neat because I always say, a lot of, the paranormal community it's a small community, but when you start looking at all the different regions, it's pretty large at that point. And so a lot of these folks, I've known them for a few years over Facebook and over YouTube, but to actually be able to meet them in person, spend some time sitting and talking about what I do and listening to what they do, so much fun. So any opportunity I get to go to these paracons and meet these folks, I feel like I can always learn a lot, and then also share when I'm speaking with what we're doing with Ghost Biker Explorations.
Excellent.
So you got paracons going on all over the place in America. Well, we very rarely have many of them. I think we have one called Sage and one called Festival of the Unexplained that's been going, which can't wait to go to that one again. But
was Miranda not due to come to that one last year?
That's the taboo subject. Let's move on swiftly, shall we?
I was. Some things ended up changing, and with 2020 and 2021, I know that there was a lot that happened. We do a lot of events with Ghost Biker. A lot of them that I do are motorcycle riding events. I partner a lot with Harley Davidson, and we do a lot of haunted motorcycle rides and investigations and that sort of thing. So I know that over the past couple of years, a lot of things have changed, but fortunately, because motorcycle riding is pretty, you're not around a lot of people, you're on the bike solo or with one other person. We didn't really have a break in our paracons and stuff here in our events. So for the past, I guess, pretty much the month of September, I had an event everywhere. We were up in Kentucky doing some ghost hunts at Octagon Hall, and then the Haunting in the Hills Storytelling Festival over in East Tennessee, and then down in Daleville, Alabama. Supposed to be back up in Kentucky this week at we were doing a full Ghost Biker Exploration Hogs and Haunts weekend, but unfortunately with the impending hurricane that's supposed to hit the East Coast here in Florida, we've decided to reschedule that. So that's going to take place in mid-October. But pretty much the last little bit, for the last couple months, I've been kind of all over the Southeast, which has been a lot of fun.
We might get the tail end of that hurricane, actually. They were
usually
saying today, we get
end.
it across from America or whatever.
Yeah. So
hassles
thoughts
you
and
eventually comes
thoughts
over
and
here.
prayers definitely to all
Yeah.
those that are
Oh, yeah.
in the track of that. And
Yeah,
so
definitely.
hopefully here in the next little bit, get to make it over there to England. I'd
Yeah.
I was going to
absolutely
say,
love
have
it.
you got any plans to come over?
I want to because I know we were originally talking about doing an investigation when I was originally going to be over there for the festival. So, so hopefully maybe 2023 we can work something out and hopefully be over there.
Yeah,
It'd be awesome. You could do a whole tour, couldn't you, of the UK around here?
Oh my goodness.
Oh gosh.
I mean,
So
just the
much.
history that you all have is amazing. And that too, that's one of the best parts. You know, you mentioned that there are a lot of paracons and a lot of events over here. Most states, especially down here in the South, we have a lot of paracons here in the South, and then up in the Northeast in the New England area. There's a lot up there. And you know, those are always so important and so much fun if you can make it out to those, because some of the most amazing speakers as well as location owners and stuff are there. And again, just being able to meet these folks it's just amazing.
Well, you've got so much over there as well, really. You've got the American Indians, you've got Civil War, you've got those skinwalkers that everyone's talking about.
That's true.
You've got voodoo because you're in the South. You've got I mean, there's got to be some sort of, with the slavery history there as well, there's got to be some sort of something.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
There's just come on and said that if you let us know where you are, we'll get something booked when you're over. Definitely.
I definitely will. Yeah, that would, that would just be amazing, because it's kind of like whenever you go to these different places, the best places to eat are always the places that the locals tell you about. Yeah, you've got the history and stuff, or not the history, but the tourism places. It's like that with the paranormal. You know, there's the big, well-known places, but the locals really know those little known little gems that people maybe don't know the history about, but really pack a strong paranormal punch. So
Absolutely.
I definitely will be reaching out whenever I'm able to make it over into the area.
I look forward to that.
And maybe we can even network with some other local groups. Yeah,
absolutely.
Definitely.
Absolutely.
Help you out.
Absolutely.
Plan a route.
So season 5 then coming up. Tell us all about it. What's been your best moment? What we got to look forward to?
So this season is actually going to be, I say it every season, this season is going to be the best. It's going to be great. But this season is something that is actually a little special to me too. We're going to be covering county jails. And last season, normally what we do is, we just chronicle the locations that I investigate. But for the past 2 years, we've started theming those locations. And so last year I ended up investigating all haunted homes around the Southeast. And so it really took off with this theme. So this year decided to do something a little different and do all haunted county jails. So here in America, we've got the prison system, and you've got county jails and you've got prisons. So in the past, I've covered some larger scale prisons, which those are the ones for the folks who commit the state and federal crimes. They're usually the more violent offenders, and they're the ones who are in there more long term. But the county jail, these are always in the county seats of each area. And, they're the ones who have committed the lesser crimes. They're the shorter sentences. Most folks are in there from anywhere from a month to around 24 months. And some of them are in there, they are violent offenders in there, and some of them are just waiting for their sentencing to be sent off to the prison. So you get a lot of unique activity, a lot of residual, a lot of intelligent, but you have a lot of stories that you can cover, not just the stories of the folks who are in the jail, but also stories of how the jail was built and stories about the county and how the county rallied around to have these local county jails built. So extremely excited to be able to highlight each of those this season. And another interesting thing about the locations that we highlighted are that either these locations have either not been investigated before, or they've been open for less than 2 years, so they've not been overly investigated. They're new on the scene, so it's something that we're able to really go in, share these locations, and also share information about the towns and communities that these locations are located in.
Awesome.
How many episodes are there? They're going to be the same as the
Right
previous?
now, so an episode drops every Tuesday night at 9 p.m. Eastern time. So right now it's every Tuesday in October. So I think this month there are 4 Tuesdays, but we're either going to have 5 or 6 episodes. And
Excellent.
so there'll be last year we didn't get to have a season finale with opening the jail and paranormal research center that I co-own with Dr. Christy Sumner. I wasn't able to really focus on getting done like in October last year. So it carried out and we ended up not being able to have a season finale. So that's going to carry into this season as well. And we're going to be able to add some extra episodes because of that.
And you do all your own filming and editing, do you, Miranda?
I do. So when I started out 5 years ago with Ghost Biker Explorations, one of my best friends, Josh, he helped with following me around, filming, and he helped with the editing. So then that went on for 2 seasons. We covered some great places. After 2020 hit, we had to modify a little bit. So I started doing either filming by myself. Sometimes Dr. Christy Sumner helps me out by filming. I always keep the number small because it does help me to be able to really account for any type of noise contamination or light pollution or what have you, because I know who's on the property. So it's either just myself, which there are a couple episodes this season where it's just me with the camera, or it's myself and one other person who's videoing for me. And then after, because I am a solo team, I'm responsible for reviewing all of the evidence, going through all of my footage, and then going in and editing. So it is self-edited and self-produced.
You do tell someone where you're going, though. I'm not your mother, but I'm just saying, because I get it. You're strong. You're an independent woman, but it can, especially for a woman in this field as well. You have to be very careful. It's not the ghosts you have to worry about; it's the weirdos that are hiding in there.
Absolutely.
That's exactly true. Someone always knows where I'm at, and even during the investigation process, there's a lot of checking in and that sort of thing, because you do have to be very careful, and usually because of the living, we're very careful on the locations we go to. I don't trespass going in, but even though some of these locations you're not trespassing and going in there, you don't know who else might have. And so I do keep the location secret when I'm investigating to the public, just because I don't want anyone else to show up. But I definitely make sure that either the location owner or several of my close friends know where we're at, just because there's a lot of moving parts involved with it.
And also, if you have an accident, you don't want to fall down a shaft and have to gnaw off your own limb or anything like that. Yeah, there's always that worry, isn't there?
Trust you.
Although that would make for a interesting season.
On the GoPro.
Yeah,
exactly. Always have that camera rolling.
Absolutely, definitely.
You don't want to miss any of it.
It is interesting though, traveling solo or investigating solo or with a smaller group. I have found, because I used to be a member of a team before I broke off and started doing my own thing, and really learned a lot from those guys. I was the only female on the team. They taught me a whole lot as far as evidence review, best practices, good techniques as far as investigating. So I really learned a lot. But it is different whenever you go in by yourself or with a smaller group, because you are dealing with different energies. And when you have more people there, I found that there's a difference in the transference of energy. If you're dealing with something a little more negative, or if you're dealing with something a little more active, you've got other people that you can transfer that energy with. But when you're by yourself, you really are taking a lot on. And so it can cause it to be a more draining experience. or it can, affect you emotionally in other ways, just because you are there by yourself. Plus, sometimes it can be a little harder because, when you have a group, you can kind of bounce those questions off, and you can grow ideas just from something someone else says or the way someone else is investigating. So it does create its own challenges. I enjoy it because you are able to really control a lot more. You can say, hey, I caught this male voice. I know because I had cameras up, there was no males on the outside of the building. I know because my videographer who was with me was a female, and so there was no males inside the building. So you are able to kind of control a little bit better because, it never fails. 2:00 in the morning, 3:00 in the morning, people's stomachs want to start growling.
Yeah, they
People get
do.
excited. They start whispering, and sometimes they don't realize it's happening. So it really does, doing the solo investigating does really help to kind of control for some of that environmental factors that can mess with your investigations.
Sure.
So there's a balance.
Is there anywhere you've ever been on your own that you didn't want to stay, that you got a bit apprehensive and had to leave?
I've never had to leave. I've had to step out before. There is a location that I am covering this season, and I did make the mistake when the folks let me in to the location, we kind of spent a little time talking. And I did learn that there are certain things, especially your vulnerabilities and weaknesses, that if you're inside of a jail, because we are dealing with some of the more I don't know how to say it more. Yeah, you're dealing with some of the more unsavory people. So, I did learn really quick, and I didn't think about it until the investigation was over. But you do kind of have to be careful at times what you talk about and what you reveal when you're inside some of these locations. And this was an innocent conversation between myself, the location owner. We were talking about my father, who had recently passed before I did this investigation. He had passed about 3 or 4 months before. And so we were kind of, they were sharing their condolences, and we were talking, and I guess we probably talked for about an hour. They left. I proceeded on with the investigation. And so I was completely there by myself for, I believe, about 6 or 7 hours. And so by the time the investigation was over, I do believe that just as we use trigger objects and such to essentially trigger the spirits in the location, I believe that some of these entities that were in there, maybe, and not negative, but maybe just more of the not so nice type, they used my conversation that I had of the loss of my father to really kind of trigger me. And it really triggered me emotionally. So I didn't have my camera going, but I did have my audio recorder going, and caught some interesting things. And it was at the end of the investigation. I was ready to go at this point, and I really had to stop. It was actually a interesting learning experience for me, that it's like, you probably do need to be careful when you go into these locations and they're active. Just kind of be careful some of the things you talk about, because you don't know who's listening, and you don't know what they might do in return. I've also had a few other situations in past seasons that were unexpected and kind of startling. And where I needed to either step outside for a little bit to kind of let, ground myself, let things kind of calm down. But, I always kind of look at it as I'm here to try to conduct this research, to try to establish communication. So if I get it, then I'm excited about it, so I haven't really had anything that's scared me to the point that I've needed to completely leave and not go back.
That's good.
Yeah.
And that's a good question.
What's your first protocol when you enter a location? Do you set up the cameras? Are you straight in with the EVPs? How do you like to work? I saw your little your strap on kind of
Yes.
EVP holder.
Yes.
That was pretty cool. You're a gadget girl, I can see.
I am. And so I do always, because I'm on the motorcycle, I do have to really kind of plan out my investigations. And I do a lot of research before I go. But one thing I have found that is extremely important, if you want to document this activity, you've got to definitely start that recorder when you start and start that video when you start. Because a lot of the time when I go in or when I'm taking a break, that's when I've gotten some of the most interesting activity. And
Yeah.
so, because I am a solo investigator, and I do put my videos out almost kind of like a TV production. And so, when the TV crews and stuff go, they've got days that they're there and they're filming their B-roll, they're filming their walk-in shots, their setup shots. So, regardless of whether I'm starting the investigation or just arriving on site, I always start that recorder because I've captured some really cool things while I've just been filming B-roll. So, I'll go in, I'll try to get that B-roll first and try to get those beauty shots and then set up for the investigation. And but just always having that going to document is what I always do first.
Yeah.
Wow.
Cool. So what's your favorite piece of equipment then? Do you like the EVP? And
I do like the EVP. My background is in photography, so I spend a lot of time debunking my own stuff, my own photography. You can go into a location and take 100 pictures, and if you get one or two that's unexplainable, then you're really lucky. So I do go in, take a lot of photos just so that I can get the lay of what the location looks like, so that when I'm back in there after dark, I do know kind of, something that may look different after dark. I can go back and reference my photos. But definitely my recorder and EVP. I also like, it's kind of a tie between the two. I love my dowsing rods. I really like those because you don't have to worry about battery drain. They are easy to use. A lot of the spirits here, in the locations I've investigated, they're familiar with them. So it's not like you're having to kind of explain, touching these new gadgets and stuff that they may not be aware of. So I love those rods. I also love my EDI Plus box. I don't know if you all are familiar with that, but essentially it's a
Echo box.
EDI box or EDI
Yeah.
Plus. So essentially it has an EMF detector on it. It also has a geophone, so it detects vibration, and then it measures all of the atmospheric changes, everything from steep temperature spikes up and down, keeps track of the temperature in the moment, and then it also keeps track of pressure and humidity changes. And I've kind of started to notice that when there's pressure changes, a lot of things will happen. So when that light starts going off, I've captured some really cool EVPs when that happens. Captured some great sounds going on around. So yeah, those would have to be my favorite tools.
Where do we get me one of them? Is that like a new thing? I think so.
Do you get your equipment made, or do you get it from a supplier? How do you source your equipment?
A variety of places. Some of it good old Amazon. Also some of the different paranormal builders like Ghost Stop have made some digital dowsing. That's one that I like. I've got my Ovilus 5 from there.
Did you say digital dowsing?
Digital dowsing. Yes.
I've heard of that one.
That's a really good one.
New
Yeah, I really like them. That's where I got the Ovilus 5 from, which is the word box, but it also does, I think it has about 15 or 20 different features that a lot of people may not necessarily use. It's got like a phonetics on it. It's got a yes, no box, a true false meter on it. So it's a neat little box. But then also I like to think outside the box, and, I always say that you really can't limit the way the spirits communicate. If they want to talk to you through, a heart monitor, or talk to you through, a smoke alarm or something, they'll do it. They'll find a way. So if I can think outside the box and incorporate, something like that, I always like to try that.
Jen's asked a question. One of lady watching. She says, "Have you ever thought about a static detector?" Not really sure I've heard
That's
of one
a
of that.
that's a great idea. And it's interesting. I have a tool that was made by Paranologies called a now I'm going blank. It's the it's a 360, and it's a little piece that sits there, and it's got lights that go around. It actually detects what sets it off is static
Wow.
electricity that way. So, and for some reason, the complete name is totally escaping me, but it's thank you, Dr. Sumner, a periscope 360. Thank you.
Perhaps you can see.
Totally blanking out. But I love that because you can't set it off with your phone. You can't set it off with any of your other tools. It only goes off based on static electricity. And from what I found, honestly, I thought it was broken, but from what I found, it works best when I'm dealing with locations that have children. The first time it went off for me was over at the Lizzie Borden house. And so, yeah, and it was cool to get that to work in that specific location. And then at St. Albans in the little boys' room. So anywhere that, had children, activity with children, the Periscope 360 seems to work really well.
To look into that.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
Do you use any Victorian methods like Ouija boards, glasswork, the old talcum powder, chalkboard, and you might shut the door or anything like that?
I love my whiteboard. Because one of the things I always like to test everywhere I go is whether the spirits or not can see me. And so I always use that. I've gone so far. I was at the Grand Old Lady Hotel, and we were in the ballroom. And so I actually drew some notes, piano notes on the board to see if we could get someone who played piano. There have been a couple times that I've written the number on the board and been able to get that called out either via EVP or by the spirit box. I've used that. I have used talcum powder before, but I typically have not used a Ouija board or any of the glass work. Well, now I take that back. I did use a Ouija board at the Nickerson Sneed house as a trigger item, and we were trying to use it a little bit different because at that home, most of the time, investigations there are started with seances. And so, and that particular room that I was in was the seance room that had been used for that for many, many years. And so we wanted to try something a little different, not start it with a seance and not technically use the board, but have it sitting in the room and mark it off to see if we could get either the planchette or the board itself to move on its own while we were talking. And then also to see if it would essentially trigger something because we didn't use it like it would typically be used.
Have you ever seen a full-on apparition? I had a picture of one, like proper ghost stood there looking at you, Kiwi kind of thing.
I can't say I've ever seen one that looks like you and I. I have seen quite a few shadow figures. I did capture in one of my episodes, I believe it was episode 2 of season 1. I did catch on camera something looking in the window, and it was interesting how it was looking, and you can see the facial features. What's interesting about it, so it's dark, and if you've got a light on inside, a lot of the time you're not going to see what's looking in the window, but you're going to see something that's technically looking out the window and the reflection of it looking back. And so I was investigating a haunted tub, and we do believe at the end of the episode, while we were filming B-roll, it was actually on the blooper reel. I went back because a lot of the time, you go and you review your footage, and because you're so pressed with time, the stuff that wasn't necessarily part of the investigation, kind of skip over that till later. And so I just happened to be going back and looking at some of this raw footage, and I saw something that was looking out the window, but the reflection of it looking back at me. And so that's probably been the closest that I've actually ever captured.
Who's that?
Yeah, exactly. Well, we caught that. We're like, what is this? And so we went to looking and there were candles in the window. And so you could see the reflection of the candles coming back and the reflection of this face. So that's how we knew that there was something standing there looking out the window, and it was, catching the reflection of the candles in front of it as well. So it wouldn't have been looking in on us. And it was pretty freaky. So we do show that in the episode. I really have no explanation for it, but I've heard some investigators talk about seeing apparitions that just look like you and I. They don't. Yeah, they don't. You don't even know sometimes.
They're not there for very long, and then they
exactly.
Yeah, I've had that happen twice.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Oh, that's cool.
Yeah. So for those of our viewers that don't know you, or maybe could you tell us how it all started and where did it begin for you?
Absolutely. So I like to really focus on the locations that have a very interesting history or a very strong history tied to them. And so when I was a kid, I spent a lot of time down at my grandmother's house. She lived next door to me. And I would spend all of my time down there up until she passed away. She passed away when I was 23 and she was 95 years old. And so she shared a lot of stories, here in the Appalachian Mountains, we call them mountain haints. And then, the cryptids, they're called boogers. And so, boogers and haints. And so she shared a lot of those stories. She talked about growing up, and a lot of the wives' tales too. She talked about planning by the signs, and then she could pretty much predict the seasons based on, the different events that happened, from you would know when the first snowfall or the first frost was going to be based on when the first fog hit. So she really shared a whole lot of that information. And so I grew up really falling in love with the old stories, the old folklore and old wives' tales. And so I would spend every little bit of time that I could in the library learning more about those, reading more of the ghost stories from the different areas around the country, and really just taking in as much of that as I could. And so in my adult professional life, my background is in marketing, photography, and videography. And so when I started a new job, I ended up being approached by a guy that worked with me, saw my background in photography, and asked if I would mind, looking at some photos that he was interested in. And so these photos were from past investigations. And so he started sending me a bunch of different photos and trying to get me to find a logical explanation for them. And so after I did that for a little while, they invited me on an investigation. And then I did a couple investigations. They invited me to join the team. And I was with the team for about 8 years. Well, I really found that, and we investigated a lot. We investigated a lot of the really big, well-known locations, Waverly Hills, Brushy Mountain State Prison, a lot of the well-known locations here in the States. And then we did a lot of residentials too. We were typically investigating somewhere a couple times a month. Well, when I wasn't investigating with the team, I would just go out riding, on my motorcycle. I've been a motorcyclist for a very long time. And I love to go to the locations, really was doing more of the urbex or urban exploration and taking photos of these places, putting them out there on my social media. And they started to get a lot of attention and a lot of people wanting to know more about the story of those pictures. So I was kind of sitting there talking to one of my friends, and I said, why don't I document this through video and really put a branding around it? Because there's no better way to center and ground yourself, and really just combining those passions of motorcycling, the paranormal, travel, and history. And so I sat down, came up with Ghost Biker Explorations, decided I wanted to release everything as a season during the month of October, and really put it out like that, just documenting my travels, documenting my adventure, keep the episodes short so that it keeps everyone's attention, and just kind of go from there. And so I put it out, and because I did so much with the team as far as investigating their marketing and their videos, I really didn't have the time to commit to both. And so I really wanted to see where Ghost Biker would go. And so I stepped away from the team and ended up doing my own thing. And after the first season, I ended up partnering with Harley Davidson and doing some different events. And so it really took off really, really quick. And so that's really where we are today, rolling here into season 5.
So do they see you okay with a new bike each season?
We need to talk about that.
Promotion.
That would be fantastic. At this time, I'm riding my 883 iron. It's a throwback to a 60s bobber style. It's all matte black and all blacked out, but hopefully maybe adding another one to that here pretty soon, hopefully.
Sounds like a plan.
You are pretty cool, Miranda, I must say.
Thank you, Sarah.
A little bit. Oh gosh. Yeah, well, I've been doing a bit of stalking, as I do. As I do, and I've been looking at it's really different because there's Tennessee, Alabama, then there's Tennessee.
There's eight Huntsvilles in America, isn't there?
Yeah. So can you imagine how difficult it was for me and Google to try and find some folklore and things like that? But I did find a few bits which I was going to just throw out there, and I want you to tell me whether or not you're familiar with them.
Okay.
Okay, so do you want to go first?
Go on.
Okay, what do you know about raw heads and bloody bones? Ring any bells?
No, I don't think so.
There's like a chant or something about it.
No.
Okay, next one.
Next one, the ghost of Kingsley Plantation. No, do you want to blank there as well?
It's maybe one of those other Huntsvilles.
Google is an idiot. Thanks, Google.
We've heard you mention Booger, so Booger Hollow Cemetery.
I'm thinking a lot of these may be Huntsville, Alabama.
Yeah, I reckon it might be.
I think it might be.
I'm thinking so. Yeah, because we don't have as many plantations here. That tends to end up being more down there in the south. Yeah. Well, further south than where I am.
Further south. Yeah. I'll throw out the last 3 just in case. Okay. The Bell Witch.
The Bell Witch, yes. That is from here in my home state of Tennessee, Adams County, Tennessee. And that's actually one that our librarian, I credit my librarian growing up as really also giving me that love of storytelling. And so she always shared the story of the Bell Witch. And it's interesting because they actually just opened back up the Bell Witch farm and the cave over there in Adams County. And pretty much you get in that area, I mean, everyone in that's in Middle Tennessee. And so most people know that story, and most people really still in that area steer clear because that is a very active cave and very, very active location. So hopefully since they've opened back up. I've only been there just on like a day tour, and that's been years and years ago. But they did just open back up a few months ago. They'd been closed for a little while. And so they did open back up. Hopefully they'll open back up for paranormal investigations because that place is such a Tennessee treasure. And one of the things that one of the stories that Tennessee itself is known for.
There's always a witch, isn't there?
Yeah.
Always. Next one.
MoonEyed People.
Are they like the black-eyed people?
MoonEyed People, they're kind of like, it is something here in East Tennessee, and that is something that tends to be almost more ET, extraterrestrial, almost, or what a lot of people do believe. Yeah. So, the MoonEyed People is something I know that Norris Dam, that's located here in East Tennessee. They do believe that they were visited by the MoonEyed People, and it is one with there are a lot of different stories associated with the MoonEyed People here in East Tennessee.
I thought it was similar to like the black-eyed children. Have you heard of those?
I have heard of those.
Yeah. They're freaky. Yeah. Last one was Skinned Tom or Old Tom. You heard of that one?
I feel like I have heard of Old Tom, but I'm not familiar with or Skinned Tom. I'm not familiar uh with that one, but I do feel like I've heard about it.
I thought I'd try Miranda. I really
Yeah, she
No,
I was
it-
trying to relate.
No, you're very close. And it does make it confusing with Huntsville, Tennessee, Huntsville, Alabama. Like you said, I think there are about
Yeah.
8 Huntsvilles.
Yeah. I googled that.
Yeah.
I was right with that one.
I should have given you. So right now, that's the area that I'm originally from. And so right now I'm living down in Cleveland, Tennessee. And so getting ready to move back up to Huntsville. But I'm sure if I had told you Cleveland, Tennessee, it might have been a little bit easier, even though there is a
would
Cleveland,
have
Ohio.
been.
So you recently got together with Dr. Sumner with Scott County Jail. How's that going? What are you doing? Ghost tours? What are you actually doing with that?
Yeah, so this is something that's very exciting. That's really, taken my life in a whole different turn. So, I worked in the corporate environment for about 21 years, and whenever COVID hit and everything, my position ended up being eliminated. So, so I was kind of looking at other options, and the historic Scott County Jail. The jail was in operation from 1904 until 2008, and so it sat vacant from 2008 until this year or last year in 2021, when I ended up partnering with Dr. Sumner, and so they had gotten a tourism grant in 2017, which they came in. They used it to really freshen the building up and do some remodeling on, and they still didn't really know what they were going to do with it. So I had found this out through a mutual friend, and like I said, being originally from there, I wanted to see if there was a way we could incorporate it into some paranormal motorcycle rides that we were doing. So after I found out there was nobody in there, I reached out to Dr. Sumner and I said, hey, how about we reach out to the town and see if we can open this up as a true crime museum during the day and a paranormal research center during the night.
Awesome.
And so she happened to be in a spot in her life where she could do this. So we created the company History, Highways and Haunts, LLC, and went in there, did our presentation. They loved it. And so we reached out to the community, and they responded by putting on loan and donating us lots of different true crime history from Scott County. So we've got articles and lots of artifacts in there. People can go in, spend about an hour in there. The audio tour, we've got a really good audio tour for that. And so then in the evenings, if they want to come back, now the daytime tours are self-guided, but if they want to come back, we offer flashlight tours. We also offer 3-hour guided ghost hunts where they can come in and investigate with myself and Dr. Sumner. And then we also rent it out from 8:30 p.m. to 3 a.m. where people can come in if they have a team and they can investigate. So to date, we've had over 70 teams that have come in.
Wow.
And we just celebrated our 1-year anniversary of being open. So we got a lot of exciting things. Yeah. Chris put together an escape room that we have in there. So we're looking at a lot of different options to get people in, make it accessible to the paranormal community as well as the everyday community that's in there. So it's exciting, to be able to see all of this grow. And I feel like it all grew from my time there in Ghost Biker Explorations, because had I not started that, I wouldn't have met my friends, that I've met in the paranormal. I wouldn't have met Dr. Sumner and really had the passion and drive to be able to do this. So to see everything evolve from just kind of this hobby of what we do after, on the weekends and at night, to actually being my job has just been a fantastic and interesting
living the dream. Living the dream.
Exactly.
Well, we've just done a sleepover, haven't we, at Oxford Castle and Prison. So, I mean, you could charge a little bit more for a sleepover, and then they could do it at their leisure as well.
Yes.
Yeah, and you could even host paracons there, couldn't you?
Yes, we've
Yeah.
talked about doing that. We've spent the first year really trying to get ourselves established and really trying to get everyone to know about what's going on. I'd mentioned just before we came on live that Penny Griffiths Morgan wrote an article about the jail, and one of our stories that comes from there, because we've got a lot of different stories that come out of the jail, and so it's actually highlighted in this month's Haunted magazine. So we're extremely honored and excited about that. But yeah, I mean, people have a lot of different options, and they've come from all over the country just to stay in this location, and it really packs quite the paranormal punch.
Oh, I love
It's an old
that.
podcast.
I say fingers and paranormal pies.
Yes, I
You
like
can use
that.
that one.
I like that. I will do that.
I'm going to steal yours too.
Thank you.
So, Miranda, if you could do anywhere in the world, like a ghost biker tour, tell us your dream locations. Where would you start and where would you finish? Have a daydream with me.
Oh my goodness. So that's a tough one. I have not actually thought worldwide, because I always, I've been sitting there trying to plan it out. I would love to do just a straight across the US motorcycle tour, hitting, going down the Pacific Coast Highway, hitting Route 66, doing the Mississippi Blues Trail, and really stopping at those locations, like where Robert Johnson, sold his soul at the
Devil
crossroads.
Yeah.
Yes,
I spoke to David Charles about that. I didn't think he knew what I was
Yes.
talking about. Yeah.
Exactly. Doing those type of places that has a really great history, going down to where the Allman Brothers recorded, a lot of their music there in, I forget the name of, I want to say it's is it Maplewood Cemetery in southern Georgia, really doing these road trips. So I've always kind of thought about that, but I really need to think globally, and a trek across Europe would be cool, hitting some of these different locations that, gosh, my mind is spinning. I can't think of
Yeah.
all of them that I would want to do, but just really documenting the bike ride and going in, telling that history, even if it's just stopping for like an hour, sharing the history about a spot, seeing if we can establish any type of communication, and then just trucking on down the road. Those are the types of places I like. I love the big, well-known places, and just being able to see them and get in there and, touch the walls and be part of that history is great. But really learning about those places that people maybe don't think about, or maybe have never heard of, those are actually my favorite places. And I could spend a year just going to those.
Do you think it could be something on the cards for you to plan out a tour like that?
I think it's very possible. It's very possible. I've talked about it, and now that everything is essentially opening up, we do mini motorcycle rides. Some of the different, one of them we did not too long ago here in East Tennessee. It goes up into Kentucky, circles back down into on the middle East Tennessee line. We do some of those, and it was about, it was short, but it was about a 148-mile motorcycle ride, and stopped at a couple different places. And I put out a video where I talk about all the different smaller places, because here in East Tennessee, a lot of those towns that were established, a lot of them were coal mining towns. And so there were dynamite disasters and mining disasters. And then, like you said, with the Civil War, there were some different Civil War battlefields or battles and skirmishes. So a lot of little places like that really created the establishment of some of these little small towns that, as you're riding through, they don't really seem like anything. They may not even have a stoplight, or you may not even see homes right there, but you'll see the little road sign that says you're passing through, and then you blink your eye, you've passed through. But there's always a really interesting story. So we've done many motorcycle rides like that. I did talk with the Motormaids out of West Virginia, and we were looking at doing something with the Mothman. And so, and going to some of those locations. So I definitely think that there could be a few things on the horizon that are a little more longer, more of a tour type thing. I definitely think that's a possibility.
So much you could do, really, isn't there?
It's endless, isn't it?
It is.
Possibilities.
I mean, yeah. And you've probably come across all sorts of stories, haven't you? From American Indian stories to voodoo. I mean, have you had any voodoo out there? Got anything you can tell us
So
about?
I have been down to a lot of that takes place down in New Orleans in Louisiana. And so one of the most fascinating stories that that I encountered when I was down there was that of the Rampart Street murder house. And so it was down there when Hurricane Katrina hit. Was really, that kind of sets the stage for when all of this happened. But it was a very small house, and it was across the street from the Congo Square, which is where Marie Laveau, who was the queen of voodoo, where she used to do her their Sunday dances and their ceremonies and rituals. And so what's interesting about this house, not just the placement of where it was with that voodoo and hoodoo history, but also the actual house had, I think now Bloody Mary is in the house. And so she has underneath, she has her voodoo shop as well as her voodoo temple, and or kind of like a museum. And she's reversed the two. But back whenever Zach and Addie lived in the top of the house, there was a voodoo temple that was beneath their actual apartment. And so a lot transpired, but the long and the short of it is Hurricane Katrina hit. They decided they were going to ride that out. And there was also some issues with domestic violence, as well as drugs involved in their relationship. And so they ended up getting into a fight. It was said that Addie was kind of abusive to Zach, and Zach was an Iraqi war veteran, and so he had some PTSD. And they got into a fight. He ended up killing her and brutally strangling her, I believe, in the bathroom. He dismembered her, and he ended up cooking her body parts on the stove. And so it was said he didn't cook them to eat. He cooked to essentially get the flesh off the bones. So when you go into this house, they still actually have the actual fridge in there and the actual stove where they did cook, and all of that went on. And so this went on for about 12 days. And after that, Zach was very remorseful for what had happened. And so he ended up writing a note, going to the Omni Hotel, and jumping off of the top of the hotel. The police found the note in his pocket, went back, and they saw everything that had happened there at the house. Now you can go into the house, and like I said, they have reversed it. She does have her shop under there, which originally it was the temple. But people, they're not really sure if that played a role in it or if it was just sort of the circumstances of everything that happened. But just being down there in New Orleans, there is such a vibe and such an interesting history. The Myrtles plantation that's down there. But I really kind of found myself fascinated with a lot of the voodoo stories and stuff out of that area, because there is so much history when it comes to that. And really also kind of an education process. When we went to Marie Laveau's tomb down there in St. Louis Cemetery #1, we had the most amazing tour guide. And so she took us through the church, and the name of the church is escaping me, but she took us through there and was talking about some of the different saints. And she really kind of talked about the influence that Catholicism as well as voodoo, how all of that actually, they have a lot of the same saints, and how a lot of the religion, how it kind of parallels each other. And that was just such a fascinating and interesting learning process, being down there in the middle of it and being able to hear this history.
It's a very spiritual place, isn't it?
Sounds amazing.
Yeah,
very much. Yeah.
They do. Is it Mardi Gras they do down there as well?
They do. I was down there I believe it was 2 weeks before Mardi Gras. And that place gets crazy. But, the Museum of Death, which is down there, that was an interesting place I stopped by. Also, the Museum of Pharmacy is down there, and just all the plantations and stuff that they have. I could have probably spent a lot more time. And then, of course, you got to take in the some of the ghost walks that they have down there, and seeing the LaLaurie Mansion. And I mean, you can't hardly throw a rock and not hit a building that doesn't have some kind of spooky or interesting story behind it.
Yeah.
Sounds awesome, doesn't
It does sound awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah. Wow. Have you got one?
No, you're going to do that one.
Oh, well, I was going to ask you one more question before we get to the last one.
Okay.
Do you think, through your experience of being a paranormal investigator, we always say that, especially to our guests, that we have a certain amount, not that we're all psychic, but we have a certain amount of psychic ability, and you can sort of grow that as you go along. You have a sixth sense. Do you feel that you've achieved any of that? You have a little bit of a sixth sense or psychic ability? Do you believe in psychics and mediums?
I do. I've experienced several people that have essentially kind of blown my mind with some of their abilities. I think that there are a lot of different abilities that I think all of us have different spiritual gifts. It's just finding that out and really kind of taking that and growing it and honing it. For myself, I'm an artist, and so I do a lot of drawing, and I did find, I don't talk about it on a whole lot of my stuff. I did highlight it on one of my episodes last season, but sometimes now I am not a psychic by no means, but sometimes I can. Sometimes I've seen things when I've been on investigations, and so I thought, well, why not try drawing when I'm in the location? So it's almost like a form of automatic writing, but it's drawing. And so the situation, the atmosphere and everything has to be just right, because I have to be able to go into a relaxed state. But I have gone on several different investigations where I felt compelled to draw during the investigation. I don't put it out there on the episodes just because, for me, I feel like this is something that is a special communication between myself and the spirits that's there. So I don't know that it would work if I did it. Now, I can film it for my own documentation purposes, but for putting it out there, I just never have, because that's how I felt. But I have been able to match up 3 different drawings from the locations that I've been at with either somebody. One time it was somebody who was alive, and that's the situation that I did highlight last season in the Octagon Hall episode. I ended up drawing someone the day before I met them, which was really kind of wild, because when I met them the next day, I showed them the picture, and they just happened to be somebody that had a very strong connection, worked there at the location. And so I believe the spirits were describing this person. And that's what I asked during my communication process was, I want to draw someone or something that I can identify. And so I ended up drawing this gentleman and then finding out his connection there. And then on another occasion, I was investigating an old church. And so I went in and I was in the sanctuary. And so I didn't know what I would be drawing beforehand. And when I do see these things, I don't see a face. I don't see a full person. I just kind of start to see features. And so I'll set other tools up and I'll ask, okay, I'm seeing high cheekbones. Do you have high cheekbones? And usually either I'll get a response on the K2 or on some of the different tools, a positive response. So then that's what I draw. And to be completely honest, on the ones that I've done, as I'm going through it, I don't know if I'm going to be drawing a child or a man or a woman. And that's where I feel like kind of the automatic drawing part comes in. And so when I was at that church, I ended up drawing a child. And instantly the preacher and the administrator that was in there was able to identify. And so I've got a picture of where they had pulled up a picture on their phone of this child who had passed away in an ATV riding accident in front of the church. We even went across the street to the cemetery and saw the photo that's there on the stone.
Wow.
And it blew my mind. So I've only done it a few times, but I've been able to match up 3 specific drawings. And it's I don't, like I said, I am not psychic by no means, but it was really just
something there, isn't there?
Yeah. Yeah, and it took a little time to try, and it took being open-minded to see if I could try it. And so I have spoke about it on a couple occasions. I've done a couple different psychic fairs, and a couple metaphysical conventions where they've had me come talk about Ghost Biker. And so I've kind of talked specifically about the drawing. I call it subconscious sketching is what I call it. I'm sure there's other people who have done it that have a different name, but essentially it's kind of like automatic writing. And I just feel like with these abilities, as long as you're open and if you've got something there, you're open to it. I say look into it more because you really truly just never know.
It's something you can work on as well. I mean, that Tyler Henry, he starts off scribbling. And also Sarah Lemos, she does the same thing before she goes to a location. She'll draw, and it's just getting yourself into that meditative
There's
state,
a married
isn't it?
couple as well.
That's right.
On locations drawing.
Oh, what are their names?
I can't remember what they're called.
Oh.
Is it Amy? Does Amy Adams do?
Amy Adams. That kind of rings a bell.
Well, rings a bell. Yeah.
I
So
can't remember. I think hers is like part of a remote viewing, maybe.
Yeah.
Maybe.
Yeah. Maybe it's something that you could work on. And especially if you go in, like you say, go in somewhere that you don't know anything about and you just draw in that girl. That is amazing. And that is evidence there and then, isn't it?
Yeah. I feel like it, for me, because when I decided to do it, the first time it happened to me was at Brushy Mountain State Prison. And so we were sitting there and I was listening to a white noise maker. And I found that as I was listening to it to see if we could hear any voices, I felt like I was going into this trance-like state. And I saw what looked like a man sitting. It was a black man sitting on a bench up a few pews ahead of me there at the chapel there at Brushy Mountain. And so I saw him turn around and look, and then and I noticed some different features. And as I stopped, I was like, wait a minute, there was nobody sitting there. It was like, did I fall asleep? Did I go into a trance? What was this? And so I really kind of thought about it for a little bit and noticed that if I was listening something to get myself very relaxed, I would start to see these different features. And so, I mean, I've been an artist and drawn all my life.
Yes,
and so I just thought, why not try it? And I've never, drawing people has never been a strong suit of mine, but I thought that here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to sit a couple tools down. Like I'll set a couple flashlights down, set a K2 meter, set the EDI plus box, and really essentially anything that I can get a confirmation on. Give the spirits some different options because, it's they're like people where it's like they have their preferred mode of communication. And so I put those different tools down and then I just really sit down and have a conversation. And so I don't want to do this at like darker locations. I don't want to do it at somewhere where I feel uncomfortable opening myself up.
Yeah.
And so essentially I'll tell them what I'm doing and ask if there's a way that they would be willing to reveal somebody that I can look up, that I can research and find who they're talking about. And so those times it just seemed to happen. Now there's other times I sit there, can't do anything. It's usually I'm drawing by either candlelight or by a little flashlight, mostly in the dark there. But I just sit. And like I said, if 2 of the times I went in with a preconceived notion, when I was drawing at Octagon Hall, I was drawing in the slave kitchen. And so I thought I might be going to draw a cook. And I ended up drawing a man and I thought maybe he's a slave trader. I'm not sure. And so then the next day, it was part of a 2-night investigation. One of the guys I was investigating with was like, hey, you need to come see this. And so I step out and he's like, bring your sketchbook. And so when I bring it out, I ended up meeting Bear, or Barry Gaunt, who runs Octagon Hall. And when I saw him, I was like, wow. I mean, he was even wearing the same floppy hat.
Wow.
He had the same lines on his eyes. And so I showed it to him. We've got a picture of us standing there together holding that picture. And we talk about it from time to time because it was fascinating. I really didn't know what to do with the fact that this was a living person. And so the only thing I can figure out is I had spoken with the spirits and said, can you give me somebody that I can identify? And I think that they just really appreciate the work that Bear has done with the location. And
Yeah.
they're just real connected with him, that they truly gave me something special. And then, of course, the other time there where I drew the child who had died there at the church, I really felt like I was getting sort of bombarded with people coming toward me wanting to speak and wanting to share their story. And so we'd been investigating all the levels of the church, and it is an operational church. And so the pastor was there, and I said, here's what I want you to do. I said, would you get up on the pulpit there and just preach a little sermon, maybe like a 15-minute sermon? We had the lights out. I said, whatever you feel called to preach, just like it's any other day, And so as soon as he got up there to start to preach, I had something hit my paper, and it felt like a bug or something kind of hit the paper. And so I turned my flashlight on, and it's a staple. And I'm like, well, where did this come from? Because it's like it had been thrown at me. So I set it beside me, and I just started drawing. And in my mind, I thought, I'm going to be drawing a little old man. Well, I ended up drawing a kid. And so the staple ended up making sense afterwards, because it makes you think like you're sitting in church and there's a kid, maybe a row up in front of you. And he turns around and he's like, hey, pay attention to me. And he's like, throwing something at you. And so that really taught me that it's like, don't go into any of these situations with a preconceived notion of what you might be doing. Be completely open, because both times I was wrong and truly surprised when that's what I ended up drawing. And you really, from what I found, you really have to let go and it just happens. If it doesn't happen, that's okay. And I was always in the beginning, when I tried it, kind of worried, well, what if I don't match something up? Well, you can't be afraid of that, because then you start blocking yourself and you start creating your own stumbling blocks. So just have to be open. And if it happens, it happens. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Have you ever been in the presence of like a poltergeist activity? Or
staple was kind of poltergeist, wasn't it?
Moving or.
Yeah, I mean, I've had a few instances like that. Not a whole lot, but I have had a few. And that would, I feel like, be a really good example of that. In my mind at the moment, I never really thought of that as part of it until after I did the drawing. And I saved that staple, and I thought, that's it makes perfect sense,
Yeah. Okay, well, I'm going to wrap this up with the last question then. You ready?
Yes.
Okay, so this is a bit of a curveball for you. So you're going to sell your soul to the devil, unfortunately, but it's going to be for something that's rather worth it. So you got to pick one of these. Would it be a
fat boy,
or a Harley Davidson street, or
was that Harley Davidson
Road
King,
or a Vespa Electra?
Wow, that's a great question.
That's your choice.
I would have to.
The top not ones though, aren't they? They're good. I googled them. They're the top 5 of the Harley Davidsons.
I would have to say probably a fat boy, because because the Softail Slim is probably going to be what my next bike is. I've traveled all over, the country because a lot of the time I will rent bikes sometimes that are closer to the area, and I've used the Softail Slim. So I would definitely have to probably say a fat boy would be what I would trade for. I like the
Someone
old military edition. Yeah, the old army green.
Oh,
Yes.
Oh, that'd be nice.
very nice.
Yes.
When did this interest for motorbikes take your fancy then? When
Since
did
I was
you-
a kid. Since I was a
Really?
kid, you know, my parents, they were not bikers, which is kind of unusual. A lot of people that ride, you know, it's kind of almost like a family tradition. My family, they were not riders, but I remember being, gosh, I was probably 4 or 5 years old, and I had a little toy Sportster, and it was green. It was about the color of your all's logo there on Portal to Paranormal, and it had the little peanut tank, and I used to carry that little Sportster around with me all the time. Loved that little bike. And so then any opportunity that and I had a little it's kind of a little three-wheeler, a little police motorcycle. So I always wanted to ride, and I remember when I said to my parents that, you know, I'm going to go get my motorcycle license. They were like, "Yeah, no." But
No, terrifying.
but I ended up doing that, and you know, next to the paranormal, the biker community, man, they are such a family oriented group that I can't tell you how many times I can go riding down the road, and I can be local or I can be going to a whole other different state. You pull off and somebody sees you on a bike. If they're bikers, you'll have another group that pulls up. They're instantly coming up to you. Wow, what are you riding? Or where are you going? And sharing different stories. You know, I've met some of my best friends through the motorcycle community, and they're just an amazing group of people because they really truly are. They're not necessarily about the destination, they're about the ride. And I've ridden with total strangers where we'll be pumping gas at the station, and they'll be like, "Where are you going?" "Well, we're going here." And sometimes they'll say things, you know, about me riding by myself, but they're like, "Hey, do you want to, you know, ride with us to this destination?" And you'll just hop right in line and you know, go with them. It's an amazing group of people, and some of the best stories have come out of the motorcycle community of haunting experiences along the road or places that they've stopped at. So yeah,
You
it's a
got the
great
best of
group.
both worlds, haven't you? Bikers and the paranormal.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Absolutely. The you know, the bikers are my top demographic that watch my show, and that's really what started the Thursday night episodes. After we release the season, after we release an episode, we do another one on Thursday nights, and that really goes into the techniques I use, the tools that I used, and a lot of that is because a lot of the people that watch maybe are more so bikers and not so much paranormal enthusiasts. So it's really being able to open up what I'm doing in the paranormal to a whole different audience that may not necessarily, you know, be into the paranormal, but find an interest in it once they see about the ride and the history and that sort of thing.
Awesome.
I was going to ask you if you had an entourage of hairy, leather-wearing dudes like surrounding you.
Quite a few, quite a few. You know, we were supposed to have that motorcycle ride this weekend, and it had actually sold out, and so, but we rescheduled it due to the hurricane. But you know, there are quite a few that do. Probably the the most interesting was at Harley Davidson event that I did in Chattanooga, here in Tennessee. I ended up, there was a guy wanted me to sign his motorcycle, and I'm like, "Are you sure?" And he's like, "Yeah." And so I've signed some helmets and stuff, but this was my first motorcycle signing, and he had me sign that right there on the tank, and I was just like, there's a part of me that's like, "Whoo, this is exciting, but this is
It's a new
scary too.
level."
This is your bike."
The
So
insurance ain't going to pay out for that, is it?
exactly. So yeah, so I tried to sign it small there on the front side of his tank. So that was pretty cool and different.
Awesome. Jeez, wow. I think Jenny Quinn's, she just said that, "I found your YouTube channel." I'll just
She's
put her right there.
subscribed.
I tell you what, you won't regret it, Jen. It's brilliant.
Yeah.
Thank you.
And you're well edited, and you look so professional, and it's fantastic. It's one of
Can't
my
wait for
favourite things.
series 5.
Yeah, gonna get
October the 4th.
Yeah.
October 4th, 9 p.m. We released the trailer last week, and so you can see
We
the
watched that
trailer for
earlier,
the new
didn't we?
season on
Yeah.
there. Nice. Yeah, you
Yeah.
can see that on there. I'm actually going to be having, so I do a weekly live stream as well, and that's on YouTube, Facebook, and on the webpage. And we do, I'm going to be having Josh on there, who followed me during the first 2 seasons, helped me get started with Ghost Bikers. So we're going to be watching the first episode and really kind of doing like a countdown and such leading up to this new season. So that's going to be great. And that's going to be Thursday night, 9 p.m. Eastern. Of course, you can always watch the replay if you can't catch the live, because I know that's late for
like
y'all over there.
Or something, isn't it?
Exactly. So, but very excited every Tuesday night. And we actually release the episodes as a premiere. So we'll be live over in the chat room if anyone is on there watching the episodes and kind of want to talk about it while the episodes are dropping.
That's good.
Awesome. Yeah.
Excellent.
Well, thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Miranda.
I think the future is bright, and one day I do believe that we're going to meet.
Yes.
When we do our Portal to the Paranormal, like American tour, I think
We're
maybe we have to swing by and do a ghost hunt up your way. We can dream, can't we?
Absolutely.
Yeah, definitely.
We're going to hire a camper and come over and
do little bits.
We will definitely hook something up. Yeah, definitely, folks, check out the past seasons of Ghost Biker Explorations on the Ghost Biker Explorations YouTube channel, Ghost Biker Explorations Facebook, and then www.ghostbikerexplorations.com. I've got some of my drawings and some of that stuff up there on the site, as well as some different Ghost Biker merchandise. You know, that's how I fund my travels and fund my series. And also check out the historic Scott County Jail under on Facebook, or www.historicscottcojail.com.
Awesome. And also check out Portal to the Paranormal, www.portaltotheparanormal.co.uk for a ghost hunt.
Yeah. Come join us.
Fantastic.
I love your all's lives that you guys do.
Thank you very much.
We're a bit ropey, but we have a laugh, don't we?
Well, you have so much fun. You can see the friendship and the camaraderie and everything. And so I always enjoy if you guys pop up when you're doing a live. I always like to try to pop on if I'm not traveling and around my computer to see it.
And ditto. Same to you. Yeah. We're always watching. Always. It's great to have a paranormal community all over the world. Thank you.
We'll say goodbye for now and enjoy your next podcast in a few hours' time.
Yeah, try and get some sleep.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Thank you all.
Thanks everyone for watching.